What happens when two of late-night television's biggest titans collide live, unfiltered, and unwilling to back down? Tonight, you're about to find out. Because what unfolded between Conan O'Brien and Jimmy Kimmel on Jimmy Kimmel Live became the stuff of broadcasting legend and not for the reasons anyone expected. Before we dive into this train wreck of an interview, be sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because trust me, you're going to want to talk about this one with others who witnessed it. It all began like any other late-night segment. Conan O'Brien strolled onto the set with his trademark confidence towering, magnetic, that unmistakable flash of red hair perfectly sculpted. His navy suit crisp and commanding, the crowd roared. He was a fan favorite, the former Tonight Show host, now podcasting royalty, walking into a studio that once might have felt like a rival arena. Kimmel, seated behind his desk, wore his usual grin, but those paying close attention might have noticed. The smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Conan O'Brien. Jimmy announced with that practiced bravado that had made him a staple of late-night TV. Conan took his seat with ease, adjusting his tie, flashing that mischievous smile. "Thanks for having me, Jimmy," he said. "Though I have to say, your green room coffee tastes like it was brewed in a gym sock, one that sat in a locker for 3 months." Laughter erupted. Classic Conan dry, oddly specific, self-deprecating brilliance. Jimmy chuckled, but when he answered, there was a slight edge. "Well, we spend our budget on more important things," he replied, his voice cool, like making sure the show actually gets renewed every year. There was a pause, just half a second too long. Conan's expression didn't change much, but those who knew him saw it, a flicker of something colder behind the smile. "Ah, renewal anxiety," Conan replied lightly. But there was something. Underneath, I remember those days. I also remember when network execs used to return my calls. Funny how things change. Jimmy's fingers began tapping a little too quickly on the desk. He leaned back, his tone sharpened. "Some of us adapt. Better than others," he said. "Some of us find new ways to stay relevant. Others retreat." The word podcasting landed with just enough weight to sting. A subtle dig wrapped in fake friendliness. Conan didn't flinch, but his eyebrow arched. Anyone familiar with Conan's long career knew what that meant. A line had been crossed. "Retreating," he repeated, slowly, tasting the word. "That's one way to put it. I prefer to think of it as moving into a space where I can finally say what I want, without some network suit telling me not to offend the sponsors." Jimmy didn't miss a beat. "Must be nice to have that luxury," he snapped. "Some of us have responsibilities, staff, stakes. We don't just get to disappear into our little audio caves." The laughter that had filled the room earlier was now scattered. Hesitant, the audience felt it too. Something was off. This wasn't a friendly roast. It was becoming personal, uncomfortably personal. Conan leaned forward now, that towering frame slowly unfolding like a coiled spring. His voice was steady, but laced with that signature Conan edge, dry, dangerous, brilliant, real stakes. He said, "Jimmy, do you really want to talk about real stakes?" "Because I seem to remember," Conan said evenly, his tone sharpening. "A certain someone who spent years sucking up to network executives, while the rest of us were out here actually taking risks with our comedy." Jimmy's smile twitched just slightly, but enough to betray the crack beneath his polished exterior. "Taking risks," he echoed, his voice losing its comedic lilt. "Is that what we're calling having the Tonight Show handed to you? And then losing it 7 months later?" The words dropped like a hammer. The audience fell silent. No laughter, no murmurs. Just stunned stillness. They all knew what had just been said crossed a line. This wasn't late-night ribbing anymore. It felt like a knife fight in a glass house. Conan blinked, his face moved through a storm of expressions: surprise, hurt, and then something far colder. "Handed to me," he repeated, quieter now, but sharper. "Jimmy, you really want to go?" There he leaned forward, locking eyes. "Because I seem to remember earning that chair." 15 years of writing, producing, performing, not riding Adam Carolla's coattails into a career you never had to fight for. Gasps fluttered across the audience. Jimmy's face flushed. The Kimmel charm was slipping fast, his voice hardened into something darker. At least, I didn't crash and burn so hard, I became a cautionary tale, he snapped. A walking reminder of what happens when someone gets promoted beyond their ability. Now it was war. The audience felt it the shift. No more show, no more character. Just two men tearing into each other. Conan sat up straighter, taller, looming. Now, not just physically, but emotionally. The air felt heavy. Beyond my ability, he echoed slowly, dangerously. Jimmy, let's talk about ability. Let's talk about who actually writes their material and who hides behind a room full of writers, pretending their words are their own. Jimmy's voice cracked as he fired back. Everyone has writers. Conan, the polished veneer was gone. This was raw, real. The difference is, some of us know how to work with them instead of alienating every single person we meet. Conan's voice finally rose. The burn he'd been holding back finally seared its way to the surface. Alienating, he snapped. That's rich from someone whose own staff has gone on record calling you a nightmare. The moment the red light turns off. Should we talk about that? The audience sat in stunned silence. No applause, no laughter. Just tension so thick it seemed to press down on the entire studio. Then Jimmy stood. The scraping of his chair was painfully loud in the silence. You know what, Conan? He said, jaw clenched. I think we're done here. But Conan didn't move. He stayed seated, ease fixed on Jimmy, equal parts fury and something quieter, like disappointment. Oh, we're just getting started, he said, because it's time someone called you out for the act you've been pulling for years. Jimmy slammed his hands against the desk, white-knuckled with rage. Called out on what, Conan? His voice had never sounded so sharp, so unguarded. What exactly are you accusing me of? Conan rose, now towering, calm, deadly. He looked directly at Jimmy, and the lights seemed to catch the fire in his eyes. I'm not implying anything, Jimmy. I'm saying it. You've built your whole career on this nice guy, everyman persona. But everyone in this industry knows exactly who you are when the cameras stop rolling. The control room was clearly scrambling, but no one dared cut away. It was too late. The cameras kept rolling. Jimmy tried to laugh it off, but no sound came, just silence. And what is it they know? Conan, he demanded. Conan stepped closer to the desk, his voice unwavering. Let's talk about how you treat your writing staff. About the ones who left because they couldn't take the credit theft. The ones who say you treat them like disposable parts in your PR machine. Jimmy's face turned crimson. You have no idea what you're talking about, he hissed. My staff is compensated, respected, really, Conan interrupted. Then why did 3 of your top writers jump ship for Colbert last year? Why did your head writer quit after you screamed at him in front of the team because you bombed? A joke. The words hit like a punch to the throat. Jimmy stood, their mouth open, eyes flashing, searching for a response that didn't exist. Finally, with a shaking voice, he said, That's completely out of line. But it was too late. The line had been crossed a dozen times already, and the entire world had just watched it happen. Jimmy, you don't know a damn thing about how I run my show, or what my relationships with my team are like. Conan cutting in, voice rising. I know more than you think. I know about the dinners where you schmooze with execs and trash your fellow hosts behind their backs. I know about the favors you've pulled to edge out anyone you see as a threat. Jimmy slamming his hand on the desk, voice echoing, That's enough. You come on my show and have the nerve to attack me personally. This is my house. Conan dry laugh. No humor, your house. Jimmy, this is a studio owned by a network that could replace you the second your ratings tank. Don't confuse holding the keys with owning the building. Jimmy's face stiffened shock. Then fury. Jimmy through clenched teeth. At least I have a show. At least I didn't implode so hard I ended up recording podcasts in a spare bedroom for whoever still remembers I exist. Conan's voice suddenly quiet, razor sharp. There it is, the real Jimmy Kimmel. The one who can't stand that some of us walked away from the machine and still matter. You pretend you're above it all, but you're terrified someone might succeed without begging for approval. Jimmy circled the desk now, no longer hiding behind the facade. The two men stood face to face, Conan's height casting a long shadow. Jimmy barely holding back. Insecure? You want to talk insecure? You cracked under the pressure of The Tonight Show. You were handed the biggest stage in comedy and you blew it. Conan paled. That hit deep, but he didn't flinch. Conan voice like steel. You want to go there? Fine. Let's talk about how. You've spent your career circling other people's failures, just waiting to swoop in. You're a vulture, Jimmy, feeding off the mess other people leave behind and pretending it's earned. Jimmy defensive, angry, you don't know what you're talking about, you're just bitter. Bitter because your moment passed 20 years ago and you can't stand that. I'm still here, still growing, still relevant. Conan laughing darkly. Grown. You've grown into exactly the thing you used to mock. The needy host chasing clout and TikTok virality just to stay afloat. Jimmy stepped closer, only inches between them now. Jimmy voiced low, biting. At least people still care what I say. When's the last time anyone under 30 knew who you were without Googling it? The silence in the studio was deafening. Conan blinked once, slowly. Then something in his face hardened. ConanCold.com. You're right about one thing. I'm not begging Gen Z to like me. I'm not chasing hashtags and viral moments like a drowning man grabbing driftwood. I don't have to perform every second to prove I'm worth something. He stepped forward, tone steady, final. Conan, but maybe that's the difference between us. Jimmy, I left the stage on my own terms. You're still on it because you're terrified what happens the second the lights go out. Jimmy with a sneer. Yeah, because no network would ever give you another shot. Conan calm, but with fire in his eyes. My podcast exists because I choose to do it, not because I had no options. I don't need some exec's approval or a focus group's blessing. I don't answer to advertisers, and I sure as hell don't have to worry about whether my jokes make a sponsor nervous. I can just be funny without asking permission. Jimmy mocking must be nice. Must be real nice to fail upward into a life with zero accountability. Conan, his laugh cold and sharp, fail upward. Jimmy, I've been doing comedy since you were learning how to read cue cards. I've written shows, hosted them, created entire platforms, and did it all without ever selling out who I am. Jimmy, voice rising. Integrity. You want to talk about integrity? What about honoring your commitments? What about not dragging your former employers in every interview you do? Conan voice cutting through like a blade. I honored every commitment. I showed up. I delivered. And when the network panicked and made a coward's decision, I handled it with more dignity than you've ever shown in your entire career. They were now fully squared off on the stage, the tension between them thick enough to choke on. The audience didn't dare breathe. Jimmy voice cracking, laughing bitterly. You call that grace? You turned your exit into a PR pity parade. You played the victim in every late-night sob story you could book. Conan genuine fury now leaking through. I was a victim, Jimmy. I took that job in good faith. I delivered. And when they pulled the rug out from under me, I didn't spend the next decade tearing people down out of resentment. Unlike some people I could name, Jimmy voice heavy with implication. Unlike some people who can't stand watching others succeed where they failed. Conan voice booming now failed. I didn't fail. Jimmy, I was sabotaged by spineless executives who couldn't stand behind their own decisions. But I didn't crumble. I thrived. I carved out a place in this industry without kissing the ring of every executive in a suit. Jimmy, throwing up his hands. There it is again, the grand conspiracy. Maybe, just maybe it wasn't the suits. Maybe the problem was you. Maybe you couldn't adapt. Maybe the audience just moved on. Conan laughing bitterly. The audience? Jimmy, you wouldn't recognize what an audience wanted if they stood up and shouted it in your face. You focused your instincts into oblivion. You don't make people laugh, you calculate engagement metrics. The jab hit hard. Jimmy's expression went rigid, his jaw tight, eyes cold. Jimmy low and pointed. You know what, Conan? I think we're done here. Conan stepping forward, contempt dripping from every word. Oh, now you want to end it. Now that someone's finally calling you out? That's on brand. Jimmy, run the second. It's not scripted. Jimmy, turning toward the camera, fake smile trying to surface. Folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. Conan, stepping between Jimmy and the camera. No, we're not taking a break. We're finishing this. The studio audience was frozen, no applause, no laughter. Just stunned silence as to icons of comedy publicly unraveled decades of resentment. In real time, Jimmy, quiet and tense, this is my show. Conan, I say, when we cut Conan, deadly calm. Your show. Jimmy, this stopped being your show the moment you made it personal. This isn't late-night TV anymore. This is something else entirely. Jimmy looked around, desperate eyes darting, breath shallow. He was clearly searching for a way out of a disaster of his own making. His gaze landed on the stage manager, who stood frozen at the wings, frantically slashing the air with a cut-it gesture. Security. Jimmy suddenly blurted, voice cracking as the word left his throat. I need security up here. The word slammed through the room like a gunshot. The audience gasped. Even the band stopped playing. Conan stared at Jimmy, in disbelief, blinking once as if trying to confirm what he'd just heard. Security, he repeated, slower voice, dripping with contempt. You're calling security on me, on your guest. Jimmy stood firm, but the fire in his voice had dimmed. You're out of line, he said weakly. You're being hostile, aggressive. I have a responsibility to my audience, to my staff. Conan laughed, but it was a hollow, bitter sound. No, Jimmy. The only thing you have a responsibility to is your ego. You lit this fire, and now that it's burning out of control, you're hiding behind bodyguards. Two suited security men appeared near the edge of the set, moving slowly and uncertain, clearly uncomfortable with the moment. The audience sat in stunned silence, glued to the escalating scene. Jimmy turned to them, voice trembling. Gentlemen, please escort Mr. O'Brien from the studio. Conan glanced at the guards, then back at Jimmy. His expression shifted from disbelief to anger, to something dangerously close to pity. This is how you want to handle it? He asked quietly. This is who you are now. Jimmy swallowed hard. Just go, Conan. His earlier bravado had melted into something smaller, almost ashamed. Just leave. Conan slowly stood to full height, his presence commanding the entire room. He looked Jimmy square in the eye. I'll go, he said calmly, but not because you're throwing me out. I'll go because I can't stomach sharing a room with someone who's become everything that's wrong with this industry. Then, turning toward the camera, Conan addressed the audience directly. His charisma surged natural, magnetic, undeniable. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Tonight, you witnessed what happens when someone finally tells the truth in Hollywood. It's been educational. The guards stepped forward. Conan raised a hand. No need. I know the way out. I've been walking through studio doors longer than either of you have been alive. With his signature long strides, Conan headed toward the exit. Just as he reached the edge of the stage, Jimmy called after him, voice thin but urgent. This conversation doesn't leave this room, Conan. Conan stopped, turned one last time. Jimmy, he said with a half-smile that cut like a blade, this conversation was broadcast live. It already left the room the moment you lost control of it, and with that, he vanished into the wings. Jimmy stood alone on his own stage face, drained of color, jaw clenched, audience staring in silent disbelief. The silence was brutal. The only sounds were the faint hum of equipment and soft murmurs. From the control booth, Jimmy looked out at the crowd. Every face wearing the same expression. Shock and disappointment. He opened his mouth to speak. Nothing came out. He tried again, still nothing. Finally he croaked, "We'll be right back after these messages." But everyone in that studio knew no commercial break could fix what had just happened. No editing bay could undo the damage. This wasn't just an awkward moment. This was a reckoning. What just unfolded between Conan O'Brien and Jimmy Kimmel wasn't just a clash of egos. It was the kind of moment that defines careers and reveals true character, and there was no taking it back.